Kriyah. Synonyms: Bhuta, the material elements; Sukshma, the object of enjoyment; Indriya, the material senses; Manaha, mind; Buddhi, intelligence; Adisu, and so on; Iha, here; Nidraya, by sleep; Lineshu, merged; Asati, in the unmanifest; Yaha, who; Tatra, there; Vinidraha, awake; Nirhankriyaha, freed from false ego. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation: Although a devotee appears to be merged in the five material elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses, and material mind and intelligence, he is understood to be awake and to be freed from false ego. Purport: the explanation by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of how a person can be liberated even in this body is more elaborately explained in this verse. The living entity who has become Satyadrik, who realizes his position in the relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, may remain apparently merged in the five elements of matter, the five material sense objects, the 10 senses, and the mind and intelligence, but still he is considered to be awake and to be freed from the reaction of false ego. Here the word Leena is very significant. The Mayavadi philosophers recommend merging in the impersonal effulgence of Brahman, that is their ultimate goal or destination. That merging is also mentioned here. But in spite of merging, one can keep his individuality. The example given by Jiva Goswami is that a green bird that enters a green tree appears to merge in the color of greenness, but actually the bird does not lose its individuality. Similarly, a living entity merged in either the material nature or in the spiritual nature does not give up his individuality. Real individuality is to understand oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. This information is received from the mouth of Lord Chaitanya. He said clearly upon the inquiry of Sanatana Goswami that a living entity is the servitor of Krishna eternally. Krishna also confirms in Bhagavad Gita that the living entity is eternally his part and parcel. The part and parcel is meant to serve the whole. This is individuality. It is not, it is so even in this material existence when the living entity apparently merges in matter. His gross body is made up of five elements. His subtle body is made of mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. And he has five active senses and five knowledge acquiring senses. In this way, he merges in matter. But even while merged in the 24 elements of matter, he can keep his individuality as the eternal servitor of the Lord, either in the spiritual nature or in the material nature. Such a servitor is to be considered as liberated soul. That is the explanation of the authorities, and it is confirmed in this verse. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरौ श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललित श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कान्त राधा कान्त नमोऽस्तु ते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। भूत सूक्ष्मेन्द्रिया मनो बुद्धिर आदिश्व ह्यनिद्रया लीनेश्वसति यस्तत्र विनिद्रो निरहंक्रियः. So, Kapaladev was giving an understanding of the material nature to Mother Devahuti in this chapter, right? In the first five verses, he gave a summary, or he gave the uh, a conditioned state of the jiva. He gave explanation of how the jiva lives in this material world. He talks about cause of conditioning of jiva is he mentions that the cause of conditioning of jiva is false identification with prakriti, right? And he moves on and gives a process of Ashtanga yoga plus hearing plus faith in Lord is the process to get liberated. He gives in a summary in one verse, six verse. In 7 to 10 verses, he gives 18 qualities to be cultivated by jnanis. And in the 11th, he explains the characteristics of the Lord, right? In 12th and 13 verses, we have seen inferring the presence of soul and super soul. Beautiful verses. He explains here, right? Evam trividahankaro bhutendriya manomaya Swabhashir Lakshito Nena Abhashana Satyadrik. Satyadrik, he proper uses this word again and again in the purports. So Satyadrik is a self-realized soul or a liberated soul, in other words. So what are the qualities of the self-realized soul? The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego, and in the body, senses, and mind. Okay. And the previous verse also gives a good explanation. Yatha jalasta abhasha. It gives a inference, actually, inference of the presence of soul. Stalas stena vadrishyate. Swabhashena tata suryo jalastena divi stitaha. The presence of Supreme Lord can be realized just as the sun is realized first as a reflection on water, and again as a second reflection on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. So this is the explanation of Srila Prabhupada explain. It is confirmed in Ishopanishad that the presence of the Lord is perceived everywhere by the liberated soul. Okay, Satyadrik again. Just as the sunshine and the reflection can be perceived everywhere, although the sun is situated far away from the surface of the globe. Okay, after these two verses, the next section, which is 14 and 16, it explains about the condition of the soul and it explains that the soul in this material world is without covering. The soul is, please listen to this carefully. The soul in this world is without covering. Covering of what? Covering of all these 24 elements, right? At only two stages, okay, or two times, or two instances, or um, two conditions. Like when the soul is, what are the two states? In those two states, this soul is not with the coverings. What are those states? The first state is during the sleep. When we sleep, at that point of time, the soul is not covering. Soul is free. Okay, and that's why we get to sleep. So soul is all chetana. Sleeping is sleeping is it's in a different mode, right? No, you don't have consciousness, you don't have anything, because the soul has a freedom, or it is free to go out. Okay, during the sleep. And the second one is the at the time of universal destruction, basically at the end of um, Brahma's life, right? So at these two situations, the soul is free, is not covered with the 24 elements. Now, so in this verse, specifically in the 14th verse, we see Bhuta Sukshmendriya Mano Buddhi Adishva Nidraya. Basically, although a devotee appears to be merged in the five material elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses, and material mind and intelligence, he is understood to be awake and to be freed from false ego. So all other times, he is always awake, except those two times, he is always, even though the soul or the devotee or a liberated soul seems to be covered with these five material elements. So what are those five material elements? So um, yeah, so he gives that here. Bhuta means the material elements, right? What are the five material elements? Earth, water, air, fire, and sky. Okay. Sukshma means the objects of enjoyment. Srila Prabhupada defines it as object of enjoyment or sense objects. So what are the sense objects? Form, taste, smell, and sound and touch. Those are five. And Indriya, there are two types of Indriyas, right? Karmendriyas and Jnanendriyas. Uh, Karmendriyas are five, they're in five in count, right? Five working senses. Jnanendriyas are five knowledge acquiring senses or perceptive senses. Okay, so the what are the karmendriyas? Are the working senses, the hand, the leg, the stomach, the evacuation outlet, and the genitals, right? What are the gnanendriyas? Gnanendriyas are five perceptive sense organs, knowledge seeking senses, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and skin. How many we have? We already have 20 of them. Five bhutas, right? Material elements, five sense objects, 10 together. Now there are two types of senses totaling to 10, another 10. So 10 plus 10 is 20. So we already have 20 of them. Above that, what is the soul covered with? The soul is covered with mind, intelligence, false ego. Okay. So these are the in this verse, it says that bhuta means the material elements, sukshma means sense objects, and indriya means senses, right? Mano is buddhi. Mano means mind. Buddhi is intelligence. Adishu. It stops here. Adishu means and much more, many other things. That's what it explains here. Iha in this nidraya. So basically, in the state of sleep. Leaneshu ashati yes tatra. So basically, it feels that the soul is I mean the soul is covered with all these things, and uh, and he's understood to be awake even though he was covered with the even if it is a liberated soul, even though it is covered with all these material elements, it is understood to be awake. Okay, Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport very well. Let's go through the purport here. So the explanation by the Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of how a person can be liberated even in this body is more elaborately explained in this verse. Okay, how a person can be liberated even in this body, even in the presence of material world, even the body is present in the soul is present in the material world, right? How the living entity who has become satyadrik, or the self-realized soul who realizes his position in the relationship with the supreme person of Godhead may remain apparently merged in five elements. Okay, all these elements he can remain, um, but he's awake and be free from the reaction of false ego. Now, this is the one which we want to focus on. Here, the word Lena is very significant. Lena means merging. So, Mayavadi philosophers recommend merging in the impersonal effulgence of Brahman. That is their ultimate goal or destination. That merging is also mentioned here. But in spite of merging, one can keep his individuality, even though he's merged, that even the soul is merged, he can keep his individuality. And Srila Prabhupada quotes an example by Jiva Goswami. So what is the example? If let's say if there is a green tree and there's a green bird, let's say a parrot is generally green. So when the parrot is sitting on the green tree, green guava tree or something, uh, it looks like the parrot is merged into the tree, right? It's camouflaged. From a distance, we may not differentiate between the tree and the bird itself, but still but has its own individuality. When it flies out of there, it has individuality. Okay, or when even though it's in there, it has its own individual. It's bird is not a tree, right? So that is what Jiva Goswami is giving an example here. But actually, the bird does not lose its individuality. Similarly, a living entity merged either in the material world or in the spiritual world does not give up his individuality. Real individuality is to understand oneself to be eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. So, what is the real individuality? We're talking about individuality here, right? So, what is the real individuality? The real individuality is um, to understand oneself to be the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. This information is received from the mouth of Lord Chaitanya. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructed the same instruction to Sanatana Goswami, that the living entity is servitor of the Krishna eternally. So we are always, all the souls, all the living entities are the servitors of the Krishna. If you serve Krishna, you are a liberated soul, right? You understand the real position. But if you don't serve Krishna, what happens? We serve all other things. Service is our nature. If you the nature of oceans, water is saltness, right? It's salt. If you take a salt in the mouth, it is salty. It's a nature. That's a true nature. You add something, you make some other, like, some kind of preparations and other things with the salt. That is a different story. But the real nature of the salt itself is it's salty. We cannot change the nature of the salt. Similarly, when we have a sugar, sugar's nature is sweet, right? You yeah, we use that sugar in different forms and different things. That's a different thing. But the basic nature of the sugar itself is sweet, right? If you bite on a sugar cane, the sugar cane is always sweet. That's the real nature of the sugar cane. We cannot change it. Similarly, the real nature of the soul is to serve. And if the soul is not in the material world, or if soul is self-realized, satyadrik, then the soul can serve the Lord. That's the real nature. Serving the Lord is the service is always there. It's the nature of the soul. In case if you're not serving the Lord, that soul is serving something else. When we're in the material world, we connect ourselves with so many other things, and we start serving everyone, like, children, office, whatever we're earning, right? You wake up in the morning, get ready, you keep running to go to the office on time. And what are we doing? We're serving the company, we're serving the boss, we're serving the um, we're getting the money and serving the family. So this service is always there. Service, the nature of the soul will never go away, because it's a nature. The service is nature. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that, yeah, sorry, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions to Sanatana Goswami is that living entity is the servitor of Krishna eternally. Krishna always also confirms in Bhagavad Gita that the living entity is eternally his part and parcel. Krishna also confirms that living entity is a part and parcel. The part and parcel is meant to serve the whole. This is individuality. Okay, so even though we are part and parcel of the Lord, Lena, which is giving a meaning of merge, yes, we merge we are part and parcel of the Lord, but we are not, like, yeah, we are a part and parcel of the Lord, of the whole. Let's say there is a whole something. If Krishna is whole something, we are part and parcel of that Lord. We are, and we are as a part. We are functioning individually, even though we're a part of that Lord. We are functioning. We have our own freedom of will. Okay, and we have our own individuality. Please, please try to understand this. Let's say there is one machine, right? Um, I don't know if it is the right analogy, but if there is something whole which is functioning, um, there may be different parts in that whole, and that in that parts, each and every part has its own role, right? For example, let's take our body, human body has eyes, ears, nose, legs, stomach, and hands, and other things. Okay, so this is a one whole body, right? if if the stomach feels hunger, right, then this body has to go to the kitchen, make a plate, right, cook and make a plate and eat. Okay, so if the stomach is hunger, legs cannot say I cannot go. Like, if legs say I don't want to go to the kitchen, and the hand say I don't want to cook, then how do you get the feed, like, food? So everything is working in whole. Everything is working in a cohesive way, in a coordinated way, right, in a body. So for this whole body to function, everything should work. But in Krishna case, that is different. Krishna, even though these individual or part and parcels will go away, he's always Purna, right? Purnamidam. He's always Purna. The Isha Krishna first verse says that uh, how much ever the parts will go away, that is with Krishna. So what we're trying to say is, like, even though we are Leena or merged into the whole, or we're a part of that whole, we have our own individuality. We don't become Krishna, like what Mayavadi is mentioned, right? Oh, you merge into the Lord and you become the Lord. You can do whatever you want to do. That is not the case. Okay, so this is what Srila Prabhupada is explaining. Krishna also comes from Bhagavad Gita. Okay, this is individuality. It is so even in this material existence, when the living entity apparently merges in matter, his gross body is made up of five elements. He settled, yeah. So what we talked about this, five elements, and subtle body is made up of mind, false ego, and contaminated consciousness. And he has five active senses and five knowledge acquiring senses. We talked about it. In this way, he merges in matter. But even while merged in the 24 elements of the matter, he can keep his individuality as the eternal servitor of the Lord. As when we keep our individuality even after merging into the Lord, right? Then, in the same way, when we are in this material world, when we are covered, when the soul is covered with the 24 elements, we can still keep the individuality, right? As eternal servitor of the Lord. Either in the spiritual nature or in the material nature, such a servitor is to be considered a liberated soul. A soul who understands that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord is considered to be a liberated soul or Satyadrik. That is the explanation of authorities, and it is confirmed in this verse. So we all have so all the souls have their own individuality, and that individuality has to be maintained, or I mean, a liberated soul or a Satyadri can maintain that individuality by remembering that the real nature of the soul is to serve the Lord. Okay, so um, that is one of the uh, that is the point summary of this verse. And in this context, there is a nice story in Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 6 about Chitraketu. King Chitraketu. There is a conversation between Narada Muni and Chitraketu. So I'll give little background of what happens in the story, and we'll see a couple of verses there, which explains little bit about the same topic. Okay, so King Chitraketu is a very famous king, and he is a devotee of the Lord also. But one thing was bothering him for a long time. Um, he was very much bothered that he doesn't have a son. Okay, he never had a son. He had multiple wives, but it didn't help him get a son. So he was lamenting because of not having son. So one day Angira Muni, he was flying through the skies, and he wanted to visit the king, and he visited the king, and king expressed his lamentation that and requested him to present or give some yeah some son for him, like one son for him. So Angira Muni mentioned that, see, you are already a devotee. Why do you have to go through the misery is part of this material world, so you don't have to. I don't have to go through the misery again now. It's just take it as it is. This is the providence, and just take it as it is. But upon the but still, King Chitraketu insists him to present a son. So Angira Muni blesses his wife, first wife Kritadyuti, to have a son. Angaramuni also warns King Chitraketu that this son may bring you first may bring you the happiness, but later he'll brings the distress. So he warns him and leaves the place. So Chitraketu was not much worried about it, because he was happy at that moment because he got the son, and he was very happy with the son. He was always spending time with the son, and he started spending because he was spending time with the son. So he was basically spending most of the time with the Queen Krita Duty all the time. So all of the wives or co-wives of Krita Duty, they got envious about the child, because they understood that because of the child, the king stopped spending time with them, and they got envious, and they poisoned the boy, right? So that boy dies due to the poisoning, and Chitraketu goes back to distress again, and he was lamenting much more than what he was before having a son. So Angira Muni comes to the kingdom again with he this time he brings Narada Muni uh, to pacify the king, right? Pacify the king. King is so in this context. So there was the yeah. Narada Muni says beautiful verses. So one of the verses is Canto 6, chapter 15, text 5. Okay. Let us go there. We have an access to this, right? Okay. Um, 26, chapter 15. वयं च त्वं च ये चेमे तुल्यकालश्चराचरः जन्ममृत्योर्यथा पश्चात् प्राणनैवम् अधुनापि भोः. O king, both you and we, your advisors, wives and ministers, as well as everything moving and not moving throughout the entire cosmos at this time, are in the temporary situation. So this is, he's explaining about the material world. Everyone, including himself, he's quoting here, advisors, wives, ministers, everyone is under the temporary situation. Before our birth, this situation did not exist, and after our death, it will exist no longer. Therefore, our situation now is temporary, although it is not false. It is not false, but it's temporary. Okay. And he gives another verse, 25 and 26, we'll see. Okay. Uh, The living entity in the bodily conception of life is absorbed by the body, which is a combination of the physical elements, the five senses for gathering knowledge, and five senses of action, along with the mind. Through the mind, the living entity suffers three kinds of tribulations. So, whatever the sufferings we go through in this material world is because of three kinds of tribulations, which are Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, Adhyatmika, right? Miseries, three types of miseries from the world, miseries of the mind, and miseries of the due to demigods. Okay, so therefore this body is a source of all miseries. So whatever the body we have is a source of all, and Srila Prabhupada explains here, we are part and parcel of Krishna, right? So that we talked about Brahma Bhuta Prasannatam na Sochati na Kankshati. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. Okay. Mamaivaamsho jivaloke jivabhuta sanatana manah shasthani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts, spot and parcel, we said. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with six senses, which include the mind. The living entity is actually part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of God and is unaffected by material conditions. But because the mind is affected, the senses are affected, and the living entity struggles for existence within the material world. So even though oh, it's 7. So, even though we have, as per our today's verse, even though we have this body, even though we are situated in with these coverings of the 24 elements of this material universe, we still have a individuality, and we still can realize the eternal position of ourself of service to the Lord, and get liberated. So that is the summary of the 14th verse. And the 15th verse also continues with the same topic. Okay, it explains about the false ego tomorrow. Okay, and we can close this class. Hare Krishna. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhu. We'd like to wish everybody a safe and Krishna conscious day ahead. A snowy day. Make sure you travel safely if traveling outside. We'd like to offer our prayers to the Supreme Lord by chanting Hare Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Ram
Rama, Hare
Ram,
Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare
Ram
Rama,
Ram,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Ram Ram Hare
Shri Nrsimha Jai, Nrsimha Jai, Jai
Jai
Nrsimha Pralad Desha Jaya
Jai
Padma
Padmamukha Padmavringam
Ugra
Ram Viram Mahavishnu Jalantam Sarvatam Narsingha Bhishana
Nrsimha Bhishana Bhadra
Madram
Nitya Nityam Navami Ham Nrsimha Bhagwan Ki Jai Pralad
Jai.
Ki Jai.
Jai
Let's offer our Amar obeisances to all the Samar Vaishnavas. Mancha
Vanchakalpatarubhyas
Kripa
Kripa
Sindhu
Sindhu
Patitanam
Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo
Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai
Jai,
Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila
Jai
Prabhupada
Jai,
Ki Jai.
Jai,
Jai.
Hari Hari Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hari Bol. Thank you, Hari Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you everybody, Hari
Hari
Bol, Hare Krishna.
Take care. Be safe, everyone.
Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare Bol.